Huffman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Jackson, it's good to see you, and I appreciated the testimony earlier about the efforts to move some projects along. We all want to see critical water infrastructure funded and permitted efficiently, but I want to ask you about some things that this committee and this Congress have done in recent years toward that end, and see if you can give me an update. I know in Section 1046 of WRDA 2014, we directed the Corps to assess management practices, priorities, and authorized purposes of core reservoirs in arid regions. As of May 2016, I know the Corps hadn't yet moved forward on that assessment. Is there any update on that assessment today?
Congressman, I know we're still working on that. Let me get back to you with some more detailed information on that.
All right, and if appropriated funds is still the holdup, I hope you will let us know that as well. I know Section 1117 of WRDA 2016 also directed the Corps to work with states with drought emergencies to update water control manuals for core reservoirs. This is moving toward what many of us want to see, forecast-informed reservoir operations, incorporating satellite technology and modern science into these age-old manuals that have dictated how core dams are operated in the arid West, because we can do a lot better stretching our water supplies and providing flood control. The GAO issued a report in July 2016 recommending that the Corps needed to address its inconsistent method for reviewing these control manuals. So you've got an active Congress, you've got a GAO recommendation. Have we seen any action from the Corps since these developments on updating these old manuals?
Sir, we did for the section 11117 for drought emergencies. Was that the implementation for 2016? I want to make sure I got that right.
To update the operating manuals, yeah.
Right. Yes, sir. So we issued our implementation guidance for that back in July. So we're working across the Corps to identify which of the operation manuals are the oldest and are in most critical need of being updated. And also, you know, all the technologies that you've talked about, the new ways of looking at water management, whether it's forecast-informed reservoir operations or the like. I know those new technologies and new ways of thinking about operating projects are being incorporated into our updated operations manuals. Let me let Mr. Dalton, who was our previous engineering and construction chief and was very much involved in that, talk just a little bit about that if I can.
Thank you. We've got two efforts ongoing to incorporate that new technology into our operating manuals. The first is the forecast-informed reservoir operations that you mentioned, Pharaoh. We look at that more as an R&D effort, and that takes longer because that mostly is looking at the rivers coming out of, you know, the Pineapple Express or atmospheric rivers in California. But where we're actually, I think, making more progress is on what I'll call forecast-based operations manuals. And that's actually taking the data that we have today, a 5-day forecast, and using that to incorporate into our manuals. And we look at that, you know, if today is, we do it today, then we look at that tomorrow, we go back and look at what the accuracy of that 5th day. Now we're at the 4th day. So it's kind of a constant thing to take a look at and adjust, but we are incorporating that into our manual updates. So
we are seeing new updates that reflect that forecast data.
The one that I know of for certain is out at the Folsom project, and we were trying to make sure that we all understood that well enough before incorporating that into other manuals.
Will you prioritize O&M funds to make sure that this actually gets completed?
Without a doubt, we're making, you know, as funding is available, we've got a list of the reservoir or the O&M manuals, the operations manual that we need to update, and so we'll prioritize that along with the other requirements.
Thank you. I know I'm running out of time, and I had a bunch more questions for you, but Ms. Jameson, your testimony really caught my eye when you said that the attempts by Congress to push P3s and even P4s, which I'm very interested in, were sort of a legislative head fake because they didn't provide the full authorization to make it happen. Can you explain a little more what you mean by that?
Yes, I can. And yes, that's a technical term, legislative head fake. In my written testimony, I go into great detail. But in order to be able to, for a federal agency to be able to engage in a P3, there are two categories. We have fully federal projects and we have our cost-shared project. Let's talk about fully federal. They need one of two things. They need the ability to enter into long-term performance-based contracts. That would be multi-year appropriations for a project to pay it back after it's complete. The primary restriction in that is really more on budget scoring, which is archaic by accounting standards, and we recommend some solutions to that. But likewise, for the ability to leverage the trust funds to raise revenues and then to reinvest them into the same project. Right now, all the money goes back to Treasury. Consequently, they're stuck with only budget-based payments, which then they fall into the black hole of OMB scoring. So right now, they are effectively prohibited on every level from doing that. There are also a couple of other tweaks that I'll talk about. Well, I won't talk about, so I will cede. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the gentleman from California, Mr. Lamont.